Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we're going to talk about disclosure requirements for ads, YouTube delisting conspiracy videos, NAMM announcements for 2019, and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to episode 154 of the BSP. My name is Bandrew. This is what I says. Like always, down below there are timestamps of everything that I talk about, so you can skip around and save a couple of minutes. But if you got the time, I would appreciate you guys checking out the entire episode. One last thing, you can check out all the different versions of the show at bandrewsays.com. And I want to start with one really short, awesome piece of news, and it would be that the Resident Evil 2 remake is finally out 20-some years after the original release. I have not watched any gameplay of this, but based on the headlines of a couple of reviews, it seems to be pretty dang good. And that is exciting because Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 were very influential on my youth. I absolutely adored those games. Resident Evil was the very first game that I got for the Sega Saturn. That's right, the Sega Saturn. It was between that and some other game, and the guy at Target said, "You want Resident Evil?" And that's what I got. And I was too young to be playing it, but my God, did it make an impact on me. So much so that I used to read the S.D. Perry Resident Evil translations, I guess the adaptations from video game to book, and maybe they wouldn't hold up, maybe those books don't hold up, but I loved Resident Evil. I would love to hear from you, though, if you have played this remake. Is it any good? Is it worth picking up? Because this is the first video game that I have seen announced in quite some time that has actually had me excited and made me want to go buy it. So let me know in the comments down below. Now let's jump into the big ticket items. Advertising Standards Agency and Competition and Markets Authority have a new influencer's guide. Simply put, to summarize everything that this new ad guideline says, it is illegal to post sponsored content without disclosing it. But I went ahead and read through their 20-some page debriefing of this entire topic area. So let's talk about what counts as an ad. There are a few different ideas here. First is paid for space. That would be anything that you are paid to post about. Then there is own advertising. So if you are promoting your own products or services, as well as prize giveaways, which was a little bit shocking to me. If you run your own giveaway, that is considered an advertisement. And lastly, affiliate marketing, which is most directly impacting me. If you make an entire video covering a piece of gear and include affiliate links in the description or anything, the entire thing is considered an advertisement. Now, under these new guidelines, it's not always going to be an ad if you receive payment, because two things need to be true for it to be considered an actual advertisement. First, you need to be paid in some way, and this does include freebies or comped gear, or more directly, just receiving a check or payment for posting about something. And secondly, the company has to have some form of editorial control over the content, including just a final approval. So if you agree to do a review on a product and the company says, we want to have a final review before you disclose this or release it rather, then that would be considered an ad. I also think that it's important to point out that the consumer protection still applies if only payment was received, and that would include payment, freebies, loaning of the product, or commission like affiliate marketing. And to clarify what payments consist of, that includes products, gifts, services, trips, hotel stays, etc. And the reason that I wanted to point that out is these guidelines are not the only thing dictating how you have to disclose stuff in your videos. This is just one set of guidelines. The US has its own guidelines, the UK has its own guidelines, the EU has its own guidelines, so you really need to pay attention to all of these if you want to remain compliant in all of these jurisdictions. So just keep that in mind. You need to do a lot of research if you want to make sure that you appease all the government entities. So what do you need to do to make it clear that what you are releasing is an ad? The post must be obviously identifiable as such, meaning consumers should be able to recognize that it's an ad without having to click or interact with the post. It needs to be very, very easy for the person viewing your post to know this is an advertisement, this is why they may be biased, this is why they are posting it. In order to meet this requirement, you could include labels such as ad, advert, advertising, or advertisement, and you can go other routes, but it is a little bit more risky, such as including labels like spawn in association with, thanks to X brand for making this possible, or just including a tag for that brand. I don't think that any of those latter options would actually meet the full requirements. Those are some bad examples that they gave. So I would recommend that if you need to remain compliant with these rules, that you use a very clear label such as ad, advert, advertising, or advertisement. And I will go ahead and link the influencer's guide from ASA and what's the other one, CMA, in the show notes down below in case you want to read this or refer to it or send it to somebody. Next, we got YouTube fighting conspiracy theories. This is going to be a fun one. YouTube released a new blog post on Friday, January 25th, 2019, and they state, "We'll continue work this year, including taking a closer look at how we can reduce the spread of content that comes close to, but doesn't quite cross the line of, violating our community guidelines. To that end, we'll be reducing recommendations of borderline content and content that could misinform users in a harmful way, such as promoting a phony miracle cure for a serious illness, promoting the Earth is flat, or making blatantly false claims about historic events like 9/11. But they go on. To be clear, this will only affect recommendations of what videos to watch, not whether a video is available on YouTube. As always, people can still access all videos that comply with our community guidelines, and when relevant, these videos may appear in recommendations for channel subscribers and in search results." And lastly, they explain how all of these changes will be accomplished. They say that this change relies on a combination of machine learning and real people. "We work with human evaluators and experts from all over the United States to help train the machine learning systems that generate recommendations. These evaluators are trained using public guidelines and provide critical input on the quality of a video." Now, before I go any farther, I do want to let you know that I will link the full blog post from YouTube, as well as the public guidelines used to train these public evaluators. I do want to disclose, I have not read the public guidelines yet because it's almost 200 pages, and I don't have that amount of time. Maybe one of these days I will read it. Maybe I can pull a Roberto Blake and read through the entire thing on a live stream. I am not sure, but I will link all of those in the show notes down below. Now, just for the sake of it, let's jump to the conspiracy corner. Alright, so the thing that's concerning about this for me is the implication that claiming the Earth is flat or that 9/11 was an inside job is in the same category as someone pushing a miracle cure for some serious illness. Do you guys see the issue with that? One group of statements will only make you question what you've been told, but on the other hand, the other statement could potentially kill you. And I think that is why it is a little bit disingenuous to lump these two categories together. Two very different outcomes and two very different severities of outcomes. Additionally, I think that YouTube is seriously downplaying the level that removing videos from recommendations can affect a channel's health. They also don't clarify if they will remove just a single video if you violate this, or if they view your videos as misleading the consumer, or if that will kill your entire channel's recommendations. I think that's something that they need to be very clear about. When they find an offending video, are they going to have that delisting be across your entire channel, or will they only delist or de-recommend that single video that violates their public guidelines? Now, the reason that we're in the conspiracy corner is it would be insanely easy to say that this in and of itself is a conspiracy, but I won't go so far as to say that because I'm being very careful and I don't want my video or my entire podcast channel to get unrecommended or unlisted or whatever you want to call it. So what if I were to talk about something like the JFK assassination? That's a conspiracy theory, and it could be argued that is making blatantly false claims about historic events. So what conspiracy theories are over the line? I think by making claims that they're going to delist videos like this, they should go ahead and provide us guidelines on what is okay to talk about and what is not. Because just blanketly stating that conspiracy theories or blatantly false claims about historic events leaves a lot to be open for interpretation. And that is not a good place to be when you're regulating such an important platform for people's income. On top of that, I would like to know what kind of checks and balances are in place to avoid humans abusing the power to essentially kill a channel. If there are human beings who are able to train this machine learning algorithm to say, hey, if they talk about Alex Jones, let's kill their channel. What kind of checks and balances are in place for these human regulators, these human moderators, to stop them from doing stuff like that? But to end on an actual conspiracy, because we are still in the conspiracy corner and we've been in here for so long that I may be starting to develop the black lung pop. Sorry. Could it be that this entire move is intended to delegitimize valid questions from being asked? Maybe to stop people from criticizing Google's desire to aid the Chinese government in censoring the internet for its citizens? Or maybe to stop people from questioning political decisions on both sides because, you know what, the government doesn't like that and maybe Google's in the pocket of big government. I don't know. So with the actual conspiracy out of the way, which I actually don't believe, but it's a possibility that people will come out and start claiming stuff like that. Let's get out of the conspiracy corner. Let's close this up. I want to end this story by asking the question to you. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is a good move on Google's part to really try to legitimize YouTube as a safe haven for free thought? I don't know. Does that even make sense? I don't know. Do you think this is good? Do you think this is bad? Do you think this is right? Do you think this is wrong? Let me know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts here? Let's go on to the next one, because that is a bit of a heavy one. And this is only going to be NAMM announcements for 2019. First up, the Rodecaster Pro is getting multi-tracking. I am sure plenty of you already saw my video on the Podcastage channel, which came out Thursday morning, very early. I recorded at 6 a.m. I looked so tired, and I was whispering like this, "Hey, greetings, Earthlings." It was so creepy to watch later. I wish I would have just waited a few hours to record so I could actually speak at a normal volume and not seem creepy. But the Rodecaster Pro is going to be getting multi-track capabilities. They are going to be offering you 14 tracks. One is a stereo live mix, or I guess 2 would be a stereo live mix. Then you get 4 mono microphone inputs for each of the XLR inputs. Then you get a stereo track each for the USB, the 3.5mm TRRS, the Bluetooth, and the sound pad. And this is just awesome news that they were actually able to resolve this and offer this feature that so many people were wanting. To be honest, I was actually a little bit hesitant that this would ever happen, but while I was speaking to Julian Krause when my initial review came out, he pointed out that he thought this functionality would inevitably come because he was thinking, well, you have to take all of those analog channels and convert them to digital. And then, once those are converted digitally, you have to add all the effects to each individual track. And that is what the Rodecaster Pro is doing. So Julian pointed out that the conversion was there and all of the individual tracks were there as individual digital files. So it wouldn't be too far-fetched to assume that a software update would allow you to access all of those multi-track channels. And here we go. He was right. We are getting multi-tracking. Not going to come out until next month, February 2019, so you need to check for update 1.1.0. Very awesome, and if you want to read the blog post about it, I will link it in the show notes. Next, we got a new microphone from Apogee, the HypeMiC. Hype! Q2U Hype! HypeMic! I don't know why I'm doing this. So they announced a new microphone called the HypeMiC, which is going to cost $350, and it is nearly identical to the Mic Plus, which was announced in November 2017. The main difference between these two microphones is the HypeMic has an analog compressor built into it, which has 3 selectable compression modes: shape it, squeeze it, and smash it. My understanding of these different settings is that it is just 3 different levels of compression, and I think this is a good update for them to roll out, because having compression before the conversion takes place will help people avoid screwing up and compressing a signal that had already been clipping. So hopefully this will decrease the amount of people who are clipping and then compressing it, assuming, well, it doesn't say that I'm clipping on my DAW. Why does it sound like this? Hopefully it will fix that, and I think it's really cool. Unfortunately, $350, just like all of Apogee's stuff, very pricey, and I'm sure some people will get a lot of use out of it. I will link the product page in the show notes down below. Next, we got an update on the Neumann headphones, the NDH20. So Neumann announced their headphones a while back. I can't recall when, but pricing wasn't available. I was personally expecting them to be $800+, but the pricing did come out. They're only going to be $500. Funny that I say only $500. That is so much money for a set of headphones. I think the most I have paid is $350 for the HD 650s. Normally they're $500. Got them on sale for $350. But regardless, I am expecting these to be pretty awesome as well, and I am basing that off of an article by Vlad on The Verge. Vlad is their audio guy, and he says that Neumann acoustic engineers referred to the Sennheiser HD 650s as their sonic reference point, rebalancing the sound to squeeze out the added bass warmth from the 650s. They have less bass and more treble than the more pleasant and enjoyable headphones such as the 650s offer. Now, I would personally be very interested to try these out. I will admit, I have been absolutely loving the 650s, which I have been using for months now. They are now my go-to non-recording headphones. I use them all day, every day in my living room, when I'm in Discord, when I am just listening to music, when I am doing anything, because they are just so enjoyable and so fun and so non-fatiguing to listen to. Absolutely love them. However, at times, the open back design does get a bit distracting with ambient noise or anything like that. And these NDH20s, I think they may be a really good option at a similar price point if you want some related tone. I am not going to say a similar tone. I have not tried them, but if they are referencing the HD 650s, it would be like a sibling tone. Let's call it a sibling tone, a very closely related tone. But they will give you better isolation because they are closed back. So if you are tracking, or you don't want a bunch of ambient noise bleeding in, or maybe you don't care about the extended soundstage of open back headphones, these may be a good option. There you go, $500, NDH20. First headphones from Neumann. Next, we got Arturia expanding their audio interface line. I will admit, I absolutely love the Arturia Audio Fuse. Full disclosure, Arturia did sell this to me at a discount. See, I'm already abiding by the new regulations for the UK, even though I don't live in the UK. Do I have to follow those laws even if I don't live there? I don't know, but I loved this interface. I did, however, switch to the Universal Audio Apollo, or Aero rather, because I love the DSP processing and the plugin ecosystem there. But this thing, still absolutely insane given the price and 72 decibels of gain. The EIN is bonkers. But they released 2 new versions of this interface. The Arturia Fuse Studio, which will cost you $1,000. But you get 4 preamps that have an EIN of less than -129 dBu and a dynamic range of 119.3 decibels. And this device is expandable up to 18 in and 20 out. And then they also announced the Audio Fuse 8 Pre, which has the same preamps as the Audio Fuse Studio, but there are 8 of them. So that would be a very good option if you want to expand your audio fuse that you currently have, or if you want to expand some other audio interface with audio fuses, or rather Arturia's really nice, very clean preamps. 72 decibels of gain. Absolutely bonkers. I will link their description page in the show notes. I am very excited to see this come out. I may actually pick up the 8 Pre, which is $700? Very good deal considering the quality of gear that you are getting. Also, hopefully they fix the heat issue, because this thing, hands down, the hottest interface I have ever used. You could probably start to cook an egg on this thing. It gets that hot. They say that's normal though. I don't know if I believe them or not. Next up, we got Presonus USB-C. Presonus released 5 new versions of their interfaces, all with USB-C connectivity. They range from $150 up to $500. They all have 24-bit, 192 kilohertz conversion, and the lower end models do seem to have lower tier preamps, and their higher end models do look like they have Class A preamps. Another thing, all of these interfaces come with Studio One Artist, which is Presonus's DAW, and if I'm not mistaken, this is ranked the #1 DAW of 2018. So I definitely need to look into that. I should probably buy one of these to test out and then play around with Studio One. I did just start playing around with Reaper on Windows, and it's a nightmare. It is such a nightmare learning a completely new DAW, all the shortcuts, where you find the preferences, the audio routing, everything, a nightmare. So it would be a pain, but I want to start trying out different DAWs, playing around with them, and then maybe eventually, after a couple of years of playing with them, start doing tutorials on all of them and maybe do a comparison. What's the benefit of each of these DAWs? I don't know if anybody's really doing that kind of stuff. Last NAMM announcement that I want to talk about, Steinberg AXR4. That's right, Steinberg announced a rack-mountable new Thunderbolt 2 interface. Not quite sure why it's Thunderbolt 2. Thunderbolt 3 is out. Why not use Thunderbolt 3? I don't know. But this thing has insane conversion. 32-bit integer, and it has a sampling rate of up to 384 kilohertz. That is stupid. That is stupid. I still don't fully understand why you would need anything above 48. I understand if you slow down the audio, you have a lot more information so it doesn't sound as choppy and fake. But 382? Is that what it was? 384 kilohertz? Why would you need that? Don't get me wrong, I love that they're doing it and that they're pushing technology forward, but I don't know what the actual use case would be. Pretty cool though. They also have Neve Silk emulation on this thing, much like the Steinberg URT24 RT2. That's the one I reviewed a while ago. It also has DSP Mix FX. I was not too fond of this ecosystem, of these plugins, of this layout, the UX. Wasn't a fan of that. And lastly, the price, $2,800. Not a cheap interface, but you're getting 384 kilohertz. You got to pay for that somewhere. That is the end of it. That is it. That is it for the NAMM announcements. Let's jump to one thing in TV and movies of the week. A Netflix Resident Evil series? As I mentioned, I am a big Resident Evil fan, and apparently Netflix is working on a little series regarding Resident Evil. It's going to follow the same storyline as Constantine Films, the folks who worked on the actual film franchise, and I am actually pretty excited about that because I liked quite a bit of what they focused on in the film series, in particular the Umbrella Corporation and the conspiracy theory behind this big conglomerate having an arm that focuses with the military and the weaponization of this disease, which was initially intended to do good to help somebody's daughter. Oh, it's such a good story. I absolutely loved it. Of course, not all of the not all of the film series was that good. There were some stinkers in there, and not every film held up that well. But it does have some very good portions to it and some good source material to pull from. So I am hoping that this will be a fun watch if and when it does come out. That is it for the news. Let's jump to what you had to say. First comment comes from American Liberty, and he says, because I do not want any documentation for YouTube to use against me, I will record a response to your conspiracy question and send it to you. As for YouTube's Bird Box crackdown, completely predictable. If you're going to act as mommy and daddy, you also expect the legal liability of guardianship too. Don't be surprised if you are required in the future to read off warnings for every item you display in your content. What is that I see in the background of this video? A big plastic bag the interface was wrapped in? He did not warn my 16-year-old to not use that as a mask when cliff diving. Let's sue. When you allow insanity to rule the day, one cannot be surprised by insane rulings. American Liberty, I think you are exactly right there. What I mean is because YouTube has begun to show that they are able and willing to moderate the content or censor the content on the platform, they can now more directly be criticized if anything is left on the platform that has a negative impact on one person or that causes social backlash. What I mean by that is now people can say, well, you took down this one video that people disagreed with and thought was dangerous, but you left up this other one, and that seems like you're endorsing this type of content. So YouTube has really opened the door and let the cat out of the bag, and you can't get that back in. It is very dangerous what they have done to themselves. They are likely going to be held to much higher of a standard in terms of what content is allowed on their website and what they are forced to take down by public outrage. Now, as far as the warnings, I am assuming that you are joking, but I sincerely hope that does not end up happening where they say, this is made out of metal. Warning, if you throw this at somebody, it will cause physical harm. I hope that warnings to that extent are not required. I do not foresee that happening, but who knows? Insane people have made people do insane things for insane amounts of time. Is that enough insanity for you? Great comment, American Liberty. Appreciate you. Next comment comes from Matt DeMoz. He says, that audience sono looks nice. I am so tired of cabinets taking up space in my room. I love the cab impulses a lot. Means you can still use a badass head like the 5150 or triple rec and distortion pedal and still get that authentic sound. It's amazing. No room noise. It's like you're in a high-end studio. Matt, I completely agree with you 100%. I have looked into the 2 Notes Torpedo, which is essentially a load box with impulse responses built in, and I would love to use that. Unfortunately, I am not able to because in order to test the microphones, I need to have a speaker cabinet to mic up, so I can't really use that. If I were to focus solely on guitar gear, maybe I can do that and save myself a big headache. If I did do that, I could go ahead and go the route of picking up a 2 Notes Torpedo and using some kind of impulse responses. Maybe I could pick up, what is it, the Universal Audio Aux? I think that's what it is. That thing looks amazing. It's a USB audio interface as well as a load box. All around, really cool stuff. I would love to go down that road and save myself the headache of annoying neighbors. But unfortunately, with what I do, I can't. I hope you do get to pick that up, and I hope it lives up to your expectations though, Matt. Last comment, or last what you had to say, comes from Scoremore. I personally don't think the reason why YouTube is cracking down on these is because of how dangerous the prank is. I mean, look at Roman Atwood pranks. Roman did some dangerous pranks. They didn't crack down on it then. The way I see it is YouTube is mostly focusing on these annoying people. It's like watching YouTube Rewind 2018, where we saw nothing but people with over millions of people cutting out the middleman, otherwise known as lower subchannels. 2018, Logan Paul made a Suicide Woods video. YouTube's response? All right, let's make it 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subs to pay these smaller YouTubers. 2019, Logan's younger brother, Jake, now has to have the spotlight on him. Walking into traffic blindfolded, now ban pranks that are dangerous. Yeah, right, we know it isn't because that girl crashed that you banned it. However, it was due to a famous figure of YouTube that did it. That is how this ban came about. Watching out for your own self, YouTube. Score, I do think you are completely right, and to be fair, I don't think there's anything wrong with YouTube looking out for its back legally. If YouTube's lawyers believe that a video being on their platform will lead to litigation, it is within their right and within their duty to their shareholders to say, let's go ahead and take that video down and ensure that this doesn't happen again, we will go ahead and start to ban videos and issue community guideline strikes to ensure that we have fewer instances of potential litigation in the future. I think that is perfectly fair of them to do. Now, although I do somewhat agree with you that Logan Paul may have had some impact on the decision to change the partner program requirements to 4,000 hours, 1,000 subs, I don't think that was the main contributing factor. What I do think was the main contributing factor was the backlash that advertisers were getting for their ads being shown on videos that have white supremacist ideas or racist ideas or anything that people could get outraged about. People were contacting advertisers directly saying, this is what I saw your ad on. This is a problem. Pull your money from YouTube until they fix it. So it was less about Logan Paul being a complete idiot and more about YouTube trying to save its income stream. So I disagree with you there. Maybe Logan Paul did have a little bit of impact there, but I don't think that was the main contributing factor. Now, let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. All right, if you guys got any questions, go ahead and send them to askbandrew@gmail.com, and I may answer them on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Again, askbandrew@gmail.com. Appreciate you guys. First email comes from Heather. She says, hey, Bandrew, how are you? Do you ever have trouble going to sleep? What would you recommend to help when someone struggles to wind down and fall asleep? As always, thank you for your time, Heather. Heather, thank you very much for the email. If you don't know by now, Heather is the host of the Sunshine and Power Cuts podcast. You can find that at sunshineandpowercuts.com. Awesome show. I am very sorry to say that I am the wrong person to ask about this. I very rarely struggle to fall asleep, but I will admit there are times where I do struggle to fall asleep. My mind is racing. I am stressed out. I am thinking, oh no, I have to go to work and deal with this tomorrow. This is not going to be fun, and I can't shut my mind off. What I do then, typically when I'm falling asleep, I do have a podcast playing. I set the sleep timer for 30 minutes or so. But if I am really struggling, I will turn the playback speed from 1 times down to half time. So it sounds like the podcast hosts are drunk and they are just talking like this. Hello, welcome to the No Sleep Podcast. And that helps me because it's a lot less engaging and a lot less interesting. And it kind of lulls me to sleep because it is so incredibly boring. So that is what I have done to help me fall asleep. At other times, I have taken Z-Quil because my sleep schedule got completely screwed up and I was staying up too late. So maybe at around 7 or 8, I would take some Z-Quil and knock my butt out and just fall right asleep. I would have no option not to fall asleep because I would be drugged. So that's another option. Drug yourself with over-the-counter legal drugs, okay? Do not take illegal, illicit substances. I do not recommend or condone that. Buy some Z-Quil and be careful. Don't get addicted to any of that stuff. Very dangerous. But I hope that helps. Listen to a podcast at half speed. That may knock you out very quickly because it is so boring. Great question, Heather. Appreciate you. Next email comes from Ryan. It was a very long email, so I am just going to summarize. He was essentially asking, can you use the iRig Pre with the Samson Q2U for VoIP services on the iPhone? Because he had tried other Lightning microphones as a VoIP microphone and he could not get it to work. First off, I am not going to download Skype onto my phone because the tinfoil hat is strong for me, but I will say I did try to use Discord and it simply would not work. I did see a thread on Discord's website saying that people were able to get the microphone on the AirPods to work and people were able to get the microphone on the Lightning earpods to work. I am assuming that the reason that is that Apple's earphones and AirPods have the access to the entire system-wide audio. They are taking that over, whereas something like the iRig Pre or the Shure MV51, whatever it is, it's not getting the same access or the same permissions as an Apple device, because Apple knows exactly what the device is and what it should be allowed to do. Maybe these companies can do something in the future to roll that out and get that kind of access, but currently I don't see it working. I tried it with Discord, as I mentioned, and it did not work. So I'm assuming it's going to be the same with Skype. No go for you. You would have to use something else. I don't know. Maybe record it locally and then send it to them. If you're recording a podcast, that's what I would recommend. Do a double ender. Great question. Sorry, I couldn't be the bearer of good news. And the last email comes from Attila, and they say, Dear Bandrew, first of all, I want to thank you for all of your useful videos, which really helped me to decide what kind of microphone I need to start a podcast. I wanted something more than just my C920 and my BlackBerry Q10 with the purple Panda lavalier microphone can offer. Secondly, I would like to ask you to help me decide between the above-mentioned options. I might be getting a USB audio interface in the near future, but until then, I would like to purchase a plug-and-play microphone that I could use to do some recordings in my home, and also when I'm traveling. I really like the Q2U, but when I met this guy, I really started considering to buy the SM58 instead. What do you think? Will the Shure perform better with a decent USB sound card, Sound Blaster Play 3 USB, than the Samson plugged in through USB? Attila, thank you very much for the email. I actually just did a comparison of the Samson Q2U and the SM58 on the Podcastage 2 YouTube channel. I will link that video in the show notes or in the upper corner of the YouTube video. And I'll say this, if you're looking to connect the SM58 to a USB sound card like the Sound Blaster Play 3, no, do not do that. Buy the Samson Q2U and connect it over USB. It will perform better. Hands down, better. But once you get the USB audio interface, then the preference of your own ears comes into play. What I found in the comparison, the SM58 has a slightly more nasally tone, and it has less crispness up top, a more vintage tone, I would say, because it's not just crisp. It's not just, I don't know how to describe it perfectly, but more nasally, less treble, or less air, I should say. The Q2U, on the other hand, much crispier tone and avoids a little bit of the nasaliness. It also has a slightly higher output. So if you're buying a lower end audio interface, the Q2U may be a better option. But that really comes down to personal preference. And I recommend checking out that comparison that I did connected to the Focusrite 2i2 2nd Gen. Link in the show notes and description. And that is actually going to wrap up this week's show. As far as personal stuff, I don't have much to talk about. The only thing I gotta say is next week, I will be missing the episode of the show. I apologize. I have previous obligations that I am unable to escape. So next week, there will be no Bandrew Says podcast. The following week, though, I will be back to my regularly scheduled show episode thingy. So go ahead and send in your Ask Bandrew questions, and I will get to them in 2 weeks. 2 weeks! Some people are going to get that. All right, that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to share this with a friend if you think they will get anything out of the news analysis that we did. And I will talk to you all in 2 weeks. 2 weeks! 2 weeks!
This has been a Geeks Rising production, your executive producer of Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.